It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large, 60 minutes of smart talk radio featuring guests from all walks of life in conversation with your host, Warner Lewis. So sit back and lend us your ears for the next hour. Now here with today's first guest is the host of Lewis at Large, Warner Lewis.
Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck. And of course, that means Smart Talk Radio, of course, continues to be in your future. This segment carrying on with our theme of money and your money. We're going to be talking to an old friend of this show, Mary Pittman. She is the Missing Money Lady. She's the author of The Little Book of Missing Money, a quick and easy guide to finding money that is rightfully yours. She was with us a couple of years ago, and she has all kinds of tips and ways you can find money that is laying out there begging to be found by you. Mary, how are you, my friend?
I'm excited to be here, Warner.
Well, we're excited to have you back. It has been a little bit of time since the last time we talked, but share with our Lewis at Large listeners again a little bit about your background. And again, the book, The Little Book of Missing Money, has been out for a little while, but tell us the premise behind it.
And actually, the third edition just came out because there's always new stuff happening and new places that I find that people can search. The book came about when I began finding money for friends and family, and I found money for one of my friends upstairs, and she was just about in tears when I told her. She said, I've been getting calls and letters from all these businesses saying that I have money out there, but they all want a lot of money to help me get it. I was determined to find it on my own, but I didn't know where to begin. And I said, I will help you. And as I thought about it, I thought, I have all these great search tips. I should put them together because I bet she's not alone. And that's how the idea for the book came about. But I kept finding additional places that people could look for money besides just the state unclaimed property site, which I admit, that's the mother lode. $41.7 billion held by the states.
So, Mary, what you're saying is that this is money held by states, and there used to be, and maybe they're still out there, they sort of called themselves, and this wasn't disparaging because this industry used the term, they called themselves ferrets, and they would go in and they would root around in paper files and file cabinets at state office buildings and in state capitals and find money that Mary Pittman and Warner Lewis were owed from old Aunt Gladys. And then they'd call us and they'd say, hey, you'll sign this waiver and give me 20%, we'll tell you where there's some money. That world has changed, has it not, dramatically?
Well, it's easier for them to search.
But therefore, then it's easier for we as the general public to search too, correct?
Absolutely. It's really easy. What people need to do is just go to unclaimed.org, and you can search any state in the nation. One of the unique things about Kansas, Kansas is the first state in the nation to do this, is they enacted legislation that allows the state treasurer to take possession of savings bonds. Now, the Treasury Department has never released those to any state, I guess because of the wording of the law or whatever. But the listings that they have at the Treasury Department with Kansas addresses, and some of these go back to World War I, will now be turned over to the state, and the people can get that money. So they need to look for themselves. They need to look for their family that has passed on. There's going to be a lot of listings that were otherwise never there, and I expect every state in the nation to follow Kansas's lead.
What traditionally follow? Let's do a little case study here, and let's say that John Doe's aunt, good old Aunt Gladys from California, 3 decades ago, passed away, and in that will was a $10,000 savings account, or $10,000 just in cash to be given to John Doe. John Doe never knew about it. His family never knew about it. Tell us what happens to that money and what happens.
Let's say the money was in a savings account. When there's no customer-initiated activity, and that is the key term, customer-initiated activity. Just because your savings account is earning interest doesn't mean it's active. The fact that it's earning interest is passive. There needs to be contact from the owner, make a deposit, make a withdrawal. Nowadays, log in to check on the account. Do something to show that you are aware that account is there. Otherwise, the clock starts ticking on the dormancy period. Once it reaches that period, and most states are going to 3 years down from 5. I'm not sure at the moment what Kansas is. I'm going to guess 3 because they're pretty ahead of the curve. Then the money gets turned over to the state for safekeeping indefinitely until the rightful owner or the heir claims the money. And that's true in every state except Indiana that will only hold it for 25 years.
Do we need to be nervous? And again, sorry, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis, here from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. We're talking to an old friend of this show. Her name is Mary Pittman. She's known as the Missing Money Lady. She's the author of now the 3rd edition of the Little Book of Missing Money, a quick and easy guide to finding money that is rightfully yours. All things financial. There is money out there waiting to be found by you. Mary, do we need to be nervous as consumers and, in essence, unknown heirs that this money could somehow either be hacked into or illegally or illicitly taken from us, and so therefore every second we're not looking and finding potentially we could be a victim of theft?
You could not be more timely on that comment. California, I get Google alerts on everything to do with missing money and unclaimed property. California just has a case. 6 people have been indicted for defrauding the state of $1.5 million in unclaimed property that belonged to other people. So, yes, you are absolutely spot on. Okay, so it's just identity theft taking another form. They would walk in, they'd go through records, and they would. I have a question for you. Can I look up money that's available and who it's available to, or do I have to go in first with a specific name? You can look up any name that you want to put in. You can look up celebrities, but to claim it, you have to prove that you're you, or be very good at forging notarized signatures, forging driver's license, all of that. All right, but so I can go in. I could go in online, or I could go in, frankly, probably in person to a state office building somewhere, state treasurer's office, whatever. I find out that I look up a bunch of names, John Smith, whoever, whatever names I find. I find missing money on a Monday, and later that week, or probably a month later, I come back with a bunch of false identifications specifically tailored to what I've found. Is that correct? Correct. And some state employee, and we're not throwing them under the bus, but somebody that's there every day that does a variety of transactions, looks at the ID, says, yep, this is you, and then what happens from there? Then the check gets written. And it's done. And then off the book it goes. And who knows how many times that's actually happened, because at this point, how would we ever know? That's true. These people got greedy and kept doing it. Well, I was going to say, is there a sense that this is really going on? Again, we sound like we're firemen driving around looking for a fire, but this is a rarity. But it is one more reason to go out there and check, is it not? Right. And you have nothing to lose by looking, and possibly a fortune to gain. Maybe it'll only be enough to put gas in your car, or maybe it'll be enough to pay off your house. Okay, so I have a question for you. If you go in, and again, we're talking now online, and we're talking about finding money that has been left to you for a variety of different reasons by those that are deceased, et cetera, the distribution of a trust, who knows what. But anyway, first of all, give us a website. Where would somebody go to start? Do you start with your own state, or can you start nationally and literally looking your name up state by state by state? I always get better listings, more listings, by going directly to the state. There is a site that you can search the majority of the states, but I don't want people to be lulled into thinking that they searched them all with this one site. That site is missingmoney.com. It does not include all of the states. It only includes 38. The one that I recommend that people go to is unclaimed.org. It's only 2 words. They both begin with a vowel. If you end up on a site that's trying to charge you money, you put it in wrong. there's an error in how it was put in. It's just unclaimed.org.
Unclaimed, www.unclaimed.org. And there you would, and so what I'm curious about is the fields or the filters are your name, or is it an area, or tell us what that would be.
It's the name, and some states will allow you to narrow it by your city.
Will any of these sites ask you for your Social Security number?
No, only when you go to claim it.
Okay. So you're not going to have to put any kind of compromising information in there just to do a little digging.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Just in general terms, we're talking about money that is being held by the state. I have a question for you. If Aunt Gladys dies in California and I live in Pennsylvania, is that money being held by California, or is it being held by my home state's treasury? How's that determined?
It's being held in the state of the person's last known address.
Meaning the deceased.
Correct.
Okay, so that makes it even tougher. In our particular case, we could, if we have relatives that are outside of the state of Kansas, I can go to the Kansas Treasury, or I can go to Unclaimed, look up Kansas, and it's not going to have something from Aunt Gladys from California.
Correct.
Odds are it won't.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless at some point Aunt Gladys lived in Kansas and had an account there at that time.
Right. Understood. Okay. Now, we've been talking about this subject that's being held by governments and money passed on by those that came before you. Are there any other cases, any other missing money categories out there, major ones, that you think we need to know about?
Oh, my God, yes. That's a whole other second half of my book. Just before we get away from Aunt Gladys, you can also enter things like the estate of, play with variations of that, where it asks for the last name, and it will bring up listings. In California, you mentioned that, it'll bring up over 26,000 listings that would otherwise never be found because they're not listed last name, first name.
Hey, Mary,
and as far as...
Well, I just had just a quick thought here, too. In general, and I know it's not fair for everybody, but in general, is the primary reason that these monies have not been distributed because the person that was going to be inherit the money, no one knew their address? Was it something malicious? Was it legal malpractice on the part of the attorney that was establishing the trust or the estate? What's the primary reason that you found overall why that money never got distributed?
I have no explanation because sometimes the address is absolutely correct. I found money for one of our surgeons, and he looked at it and said, BCBS can't find me. They can certainly find me when they want a refund, meaning Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah.
And it was the correct address, so I have no explanation. But you mentioned other sites where there may be money that people might be interested in, and like I said, this is the second half of my book, is if you ever got one of those little cards in the mail for a class action lawsuit, there are places you can look and see about that. If you changed jobs and left your 401k behind, forgotten pensions. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation has almost $300 million in forgotten pensions. And some of that is from bankrupt companies like Enron and Eastern Airlines. Who would think that if your company went bankrupt that there might still be money for you?
And what's the name of that organization again?
It's the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation.
Okay.
It's the initials, pbgc.gov.
Okay. pbgc.gov. All right.
I've got information about finding oil and mineral rights, old stock certificates. If the company is out of business, the certificate in and of itself may have collector value. Tips on how to prevent your money from going to the state, because my goal is to make my book obsolete. My goal is to get the word out there, have people fix the hole in their back pocket that they're losing this money through, and stop the flood of money into the states.
Right.
That is, like I said, that is the big dollar amount.
Is there a particular era And again, this is a big generalization, but if we were to uncover and look into every single available dollar, would your guess be that these dollars are ones that have been sitting there from decades and decades ago, and as time has gone on with better communication like the internet, et cetera, email, blah, 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 easier to find people via social media, that those dollars are reducing as time goes along overall? And by I say reducing, meaning the dollars that are left now are much more likely to be picked up quicker than dollars left in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
That's correct, because it's easier to track them now. And I don't know of any state that has returned more in a year than they have taken in. So the jackpot is continuing to grow. And the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators that gives that dollar amount, the $41.7 billion, they only do that once every 4 years. So that dollar amount is actually significantly higher. What they found was with life insurers, what they were doing was they would check the Social Security death master file for when they could stop making a payment to an annuitant, but they didn't check the very same database to find out when a policyholder died and they needed to make a payout to the beneficiary. So that has changed, and those listings are coming into the state. So the next number that the association comes out with is going to be huge.
Do you have any idea, Mary, how often these records in the individual states are updated? Is it once a year? Is it daily? Or how often does that happen?
Some of them are daily. Some of them are once a week. I actually included that in my book so that people can tell by their state how often it's updated, and they know how often to search. In a second, I'll tell you how often Kansas does it.
Any particular state or area of the country where there's more money sitting around than others just because of the way the laws are set up or whatever?
New York has $12 billion, more than 25% of all the missing money nationwide. Let's see, Kansas is updated annually and as reports come in.
And, of course, who knows as reports come in? That's pretty vague. But, okay, we know at least once a year they're updating and trying to see what's out there.
Yes, and as for finders in Kansas, the finder's fee is not to exceed 15%, and the listing must be in state possession at least 24 months. Okay,
now tell us what you mean by finder's fee. Again, we're talking about the ferrets we talked about earlier. Is that correct?
Yes. The finders are the people who will find the listings and contact you, and for a percentage, they will help you get your money. In most cases, it's with the state. In some cases, it isn't, though. And people can get a free copy of the first chapter of my book, Finder's Fees, to pay or not to pay, because I try to rat out their secret little stash.
Okay.
There are places that they look that are not on the state site that sometimes do have a time limit. Anyway, they can get that for free by going to my website, thelittlebookofmissingmoney.com, because I want everybody to have that information.
What, any other, and again, so The Little Book of Missing Money, a quick and easy guide to finding money that is rightfully yours, covers a wide variety of ways in which you can track down money that has either been left to you, for you, forgotten, never communicated, et cetera, et cetera. And again, Mary, you said this is how many billions is laying out there?
$41.7 billion just with the states. And that doesn't include the $16 billion in savings bonds that have matured and should be cashed in and reinvested.
Okay. Well, there is opportunity out there. There is no guarantee that there is money out there for you, but there's no reason for you to not at least check. That would certainly make your day, I would think. What's the, Mary, just in general, what's the turnaround time if we go out there and sure enough Aunt Gladys from California left us $10,000? What's the turnaround time usually if you provide the states with the information they need?
That can vary depending on how much publicity has been out there. The more publicity generates more claims, and they get backlogged a little. Every state files will fill the request in the order that they are received. So the sooner you get your request in, the sooner you'll get your money.
I guess I'm a little surprised that, again, we talked about ferrets, as they would call themselves, those that make a living off of finding this kind of money for people. I'm surprised, I guess, that industry isn't more sophisticated, that they wouldn't have incredibly sophisticated computer programs that would roar through millions of names off of an inventory in each state in a matter of minutes or hours.
Some states are easier to find the listings for, and actually the downside of my book is there's so many other places that people can search that it's kind of become the little textbook for the finder industry.
Oh, I'll bet. I don't doubt that a bit. Well, again, the work is called, actually it's the third edition by the missing money lady, Mary Pittman, the author of The Little Book of Missing Money, a quick and easy guide to finding money that is rightfully yours. The website is thelittlebookofmissingmoney.com, just like it sounds. Mary, what about other ways to reach you and find out about your work?
It's best to go through my website. My contact information is there. I love speaking to groups. I customize it. The last 3 groups I spoke for, I found money for the host organization.
Oh, okay. That seems certainly worthwhile. Well, listen, thank you again so much. Would love to have you on again. Sounds like you're awfully busy. And I'm just trying to imagine finding some money you never knew was there. That would certainly make your day. We really appreciate your insights.
Thank you. I'm happy to share it.
You bet. We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.